Hello, and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinale, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching once a week. If this is the first episode of mine that you stumble upon and you enjoy it, please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get notified when I upload a new episode. If you've listened to a few episodes and you enjoy, please make sure you're following me. Please like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. I am recording this Wednesday night, and honestly, later Wednesday night than I had originally planned. And because of that, I don't think I'm going to finish recording tonight. And tomorrow is Thanksgiving, so my goal is to still get this episode out on Saturday. Last week's episode was out on Saturday, and then hopefully starting this upcoming week, I'll get into a better rhythm of like recording Sundays or Mondays so I can release midweek instead of releasing on the weekend. But that's where I'm at for this. Just wanted to give that update. So as I have been, I'm going to be covering I Love LA, and then in the second half of this podcast, I am going to be doing my thoughts on Wicked for Good. I did watch it on Tuesday at a drive-in theater in Los Angeles. It was in Paramount, California, but it's in LA County. And it was such a good experience. If I have any time after, like if I have gotten all of my thoughts out on both I Love LA and Wicked for Good, I have some other shows that maybe I can briefly share my thoughts on, but I think I'll have enough to say. But thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Sorry for all the delays, and the last week's episode was longer, so it took me longer, but hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I can't express how much it means to people listening to this podcast. Okay, episode 4 of I Love LA was called Upstairs-Is, and this was a more chill episode. To be honest, I liked it. Episodes 2 and 3 were like really plot heavy, where it's like conflict was arising. This episode, I don't feel like conflict arose. It was just kind of like we got to see Tallulah explore more of the influencer life and living in LA and like, you know, being in that sphere and what that means to her. And then we got to see more of Maya and Alani's dynamic and friendship and history. So it was a lot. Like the last 2 episodes, I felt like had a lot more plot. This felt a lot more like character development, but I enjoyed it. We open in Maya's room. Maya, Alani, Charlie, and Tallulah are getting ready in Maya's room. Tallulah's opening her PR, the Balenciaga bag's there. And then Alani says that Quen will love the bag. Maya talks about a TikTok of hers getting ready to go to a party at Quen Blackwell's house. Or not her house, but like a party that Quen is throwing. And she's a real influencer. I know nothing of her. Well, not nothing. I know some of her because people I watch have collabed with her. Like Addison Rae went on her Twitch stream, YouTube channel. I don't know what platform she's on, but I saw clips of Addison Rae and her. And apparently, I think she has been a TikToker because I saw videos of them like dancing together back in the day when Addison's still on TikTok, but like now she's expanding into like her musical career. And that's personally what I'm a fan of. Like I find her TikTok to be fun, but dancing TikTokers never really spoke to me. But I really like her music. Anyways, sorry. So I've seen, like, I knew of her. And there's a really funny clip of when Addison Rae is talking about a dress she has from somebody named Gypsy Rose. And I don't remember this person's last name. But she's like an old actress, like a very famous Hollywood actress. And Quen goes, do you mean, like, as in Blanchard? And that cracked me up. So like I have seen stuff of her, but I don't know much about her persona. I don't know how accurate her portrayal of herself was in this, but that was fun to... Anyways, sorry. Tallulah's not worried about the party. She thinks that they'll be instant friends, her and Quen. And Maya's like, you're internet friends. You don't know how it'll be in real life. Maya's trying to like coach her, be her manager and everything. And then Maya asks if they can start sending the PR to Alani's place instead. And Tallulah's like, well, I'm living there and I don't want people to know my address. I'll get a stalker, which maybe I'm stupid, but PR, I mean, maybe people who are on PR lists have PO boxes where they get their PR sent. But I feel like there are influencers who get PR sent directly to their house. And like, you're not going to get a stalker from that because, I mean, if you do, then that's like a huge breach of trust with the companies that you're on a PR list for, because those are like corporations that like, not that I don't think that like sharing your address could lead to a stalking situation, but I feel like that seems unlikely because I'm like, wouldn't that be a huge liability for the company if like your address reaches a dangerous person because you're on their PR list? Because the whole point of getting PR as an influencer is that the company benefits by you getting their products, because if you post about it, like their PR, when you receive it, there's not like it's not a established contract that you have to post. Like it's not like a brand deal where you have to post that brand and you have a certain amount of like deliverables that you have to post, but they hope that you'll post about it so that, you know, that they can get the PR. So it's like a professional thing that you're on these lists. It wouldn't make sense that like that's how you end up getting a stalker. I understand. I'm like getting too much into the weeds of it. But as somebody who finds influencers very fascinating, I'm like, I don't think that's a real worry that most people have with PR. And also, not always, but sometimes it's like you're not going to be the most famous person on the list. Not that like level of fame doesn't equal like people who aren't super famous can have stalkers, obviously. I don't know. Sorry, I'm getting into the weeds of this, but it's just like sending your PR to your house, I don't think that's what would cause you to have a stalker. I don't know. And I also think in this day and age, it's like there are more dangerous ways for people to figure out where you are and stuff. I don't know. I'm overthinking it. It's not that deep. And then Maya's like, but then they'll know my address. And Tallulah's like, well, they're not looking for you. It's like, but again, if somebody is stalking you, they will figure out that Maya's your manager. And they will like notice that you're coming by the house a lot, and then they'll follow you home from there. I'm overthinking it. It's not that deep. Maybe I haven't consumed enough content about people having stalkers. Maybe people do get stalkers from PR lists. And if that is the case, and I am ignorant to this, I'm very sorry. Anyways, Alani says that stalkers are really dangerous. There's a woman who thinks that Alani's dad still lives at her house, like Alani's house. Her dad used to live there. And she sends an envelope with a bullet to the house every week. Alani has so many stories. Dylan comes in, grabs a jacket. Tallulah makes a joke about somebody hooking up with Maya at the party. And Maya's like, we have a very open flirting policy. He's very secure. And he's like, yeah, and I'm also like super, like I'm not really interested in going to like an influencer's party like at their mansion. And Charlie's like, it's not just some influencer, it's Quen. Like she's a big deal. You need to learn people's names. Maybe I'm wrong. Is she that big of a deal? Like, I'm interested, and maybe I should just look into it, but I don't care enough to. But, like, maybe she is, and it's just not the algorithm that I'm consuming. But I'm wondering, is she, like, as big a deal as they were making it seem in this? Or was it kind of a, like, yes, she's a real influencer? Because there's stuff, obviously, in this that I'm like, okay, this is tongue-in-cheek. This isn't, like, she's genuinely playing herself, right? It's an exaggerated version of her. So I'm like, I'm not saying that she's not a big influencer, because I think she is, but I'm like, I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean to her. I'm sure she is genuinely a big deal. And I did know of her before, but anyways, sorry, I'm overthinking this. And also, so Charlie's like, she's a really big deal, and also it's not at her house. It's at an undisclosed location. They get the address, and it's at Elijah Wood's house, and Alani begins to panic a little bit. She knocks a cup over and it shatters the glass, and then the title card, I Love LA, and somebody's sweeping the glass up from the floor. They arrived at the party, and Maya is telling Tallulah she should get a TikTok with Quen, but she can't ask. There's a rule in LA where you can't ask somebody more famous than you to make a TikTok with you. She needs to be the one to initiate it. And Charlie's like, it's really surprising that Elijah Wood is like so unscathed from being a child actor. I feel like most of those people have been like abused in some capacity. And Alani is defensive of Elijah Wood. She's like, why would you say that? And then she's like, I know I'm being weird. I have a huge crush on him. She's like, we almost hooked up in college. And Maya's like, yeah, he did a Q&A for our acting class. And they totally had a moment when Alani was asking him about The Lord of the Rings. Quen sees them. I think her name is Quen. I don't know. I know how to spell it, but now I'm forgetting how to pronounce it. I think it's Quen. Anyways, I'm so sorry to her. She sees them and says hi, and then we cut to them inside at the party. She's complimenting Tallulah about the video, and Maya's like taking credit she's like, our video, thank you. We worked so hard on that. They wanted us to apologize, but we did this. And I understand. Like, the thing is, I don't know, because I'm not an influencer. And the content that I do create is all entirely my own. So, like, I do understand that when somebody has a team, it is probably like, we made this together, you know, and it's not just like the person behind the camera or the person in front of the camera takes all responsibility. So, like, I understand Maya wanting to be like, we did this together. But I also don't understand it. I don't know if I'm supposed to be annoyed by Maya in this moment or not. And I guess maybe there's not any, like, what I'm supposed to feel in this moment. But I'm torn. I'm like, am I supposed to feel good or not? I don't know what I don't know. I'm making no sense. I just, like, am I supposed to be annoyed by her trying to take credit? Or am I supposed to understand that, like, a manager's role, like, she is involved in these things? I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. But anyways, then Quen mentions Elijah. Alani, like, is like, oh, is he here? And she's like, no, he's not home. He doesn't really like parties. Tells them to make themselves comfortable anywhere downstairs. Then Quen pulls Hulu to the side to, like, meet Natalie, her assistant or somebody, I don't remember, and leaves Maya behind. Charlie, meanwhile, is talking to some guy, and Maya and Alani decide to do a lap. Alani's, like, super excited that she's in Elijah's house. She's like, I can't believe this is his counter. These are his coasters, which I will use because I respect him. I love her. She's my favorite character, as I've said many times. And then Maya's like, we're never going to be here again. We should snoop. Quen and Tallulah are outside having a conversation, and she asks if Tallulah's booked anything since the Paulina video. And she's like, no, but I got this bag. And then Quen's like, so what are you trying to be, like a fashion girly? And she's like, yeah, I guess. It's clearly two different approaches to content creation, where she's like, I'm just posting about my life. Tallulah is, while Quen is like, who are you going to be? What's the strategy? What's the business behind this? Like, who's your persona? And I think those are two very interesting ways. And I do think, like, a real, probably healthy way to be an influencer somewhere in the middle. And I also think, I don't know, maybe this is just me, and maybe this is just because I personally, when I've decided what I want my niche to be with this podcast, and therefore the way I translate it to my other platforms, for the most part, because on TikTok I do share, like, stuff about my life, but I think I don't want, like, I want my opinions and my analysis and my thoughts on TV or media or whatever I'm consuming. I want that to be what, like, I don't want to be the product. And, like, I understand that you have a persona, but, like, when you're a content creator, but it's like, I want people to tune in because they're interested in what I have to say, not because they're interested in me. And I think I have interesting stories to tell, and I feel like I could talk about myself and I could make myself, like, the focus, but I just don't care to, because I feel like I'm a healthier, more fulfilled version of myself when the stuff that I'm putting on the internet for people to consume are not the most intimately personal things about myself or things that I'm processing on my own. And obviously I check in here and there, or, like, you know, share my opinions and my stories and my life and my perspective in the coverage that I'm doing. But I just, like, I don't, when I'm going through something difficult, or like I don't know. I think that's interesting, and I think that's why, like, the content that I resonate with more is people who, like, do commentary and they, like, analyze some kind of media. And not that I don't enjoy people whose, like, thing is themselves and telling stories, and, like, I do enjoy that, but I think that's just not who I want to be on social media. Anyways, I'm not making any sense. And I'm obviously not an influencer, but I feel like for me personally, if I was going to be, and in the content that I create, my goal would be somewhere in the middle, where I think of it, like, professionally, and I'm like, what am I trying to convey? Like, what do I want my persona to be? For me, it's like more like, what do I want my niche to be? And I want my niche to be TV, me sharing my thoughts on stories, whether that's, like, reality TV, analyzing real people's stories, or analyzing scripted TV, you know? I'm really interested in that. That's my niche. But also, like, doing it as authentically as possible, and not, like, manufacturing it, but also being very mindful and, like, intentional about what I decide to share my opinion on or like focus on or like share about my own life and things like that. I don't like the way the internet engages with stuff. And when I share stuff, like when I form my opinions about TV, it's like, yes, I feel very strongly and I do have thought out reasons for it, but it's like at the end of the day, this is my opinion and it's my opinion about a show, and you don't have to agree with me about how you're interpreting the show, and I don't care because this is how I interpret the show. This is my opinion about it. But when it comes to my life, it's like, well, it's not you're interpreting something differently. It's like you're going off of the very limited stuff that I'm sharing, and then you're making an assertion, and it's annoying. So I just don't like to share about my life. Anyways. And I do share about my life, but it's just like not about stuff that I would then, so I don't know. Sorry, I went on all this unnecessary tangent. I think the way they approach content is interesting to me. And I think neither extreme is really where I fall into it with my own content. And if I were to be a creator, But anyways, and I will say when I started this podcast, I was like the first 10 or so episodes were me sharing about my life and like my life post grad and my time in college and like my time in high school. And I did share stories about my life. And then when I got a job and I wanted to podcast again, I was like, I don't want this to be, like, I was like, I don't want my life to be what I talk about. And that was a great decision. Anyway, sorry, I'm going on all these unnecessary tangents. Then Quen asks what brands Maya's talking to, and Tallulah's like, I don't know, probably a lot. She did get me this bag. And Quen's like, did she or did your sweat get you the bag? Like, she's trying to be like, did she get you the bag, or like, did you get yourself the bag? What is Maya actually doing for you? You're the talent. And then Tallulah mentioned shrimp, and then Quen is like, do you want to make a video? And she's like, yeah, I mean, anytime. She's like, how about right now? And she's like, yeah, okay, right now. And then she's like, okay, we'll do the video and then we'll get you shrimp. That's important. It's not that important. Alani and Maya are looking around the house. They pass a staircase with like tape and a sign that says, please stay downstairs, smiley face. And Alani says they should go upstairs, and Maya's like, he probably has cameras everywhere. Like, what if he gets home and he sees us going upstairs and he jerks off to us? And Alani's like, that's awesome, we have to go. So they go up the stairs. Meanwhile, Charlie's talking to some guy whose name I didn't know until literally the end of the episode. His name is Lucas, and he's like complimenting Charlie, says Charlie's super nice, compliments his jacket. And then he asks how Charlie's drink is, and Charlie's like, it's good, but it could use some ice. And Lucas is like, yeah, same, we should probably get some. Charlie's like, I already checked, like, they don't have ice here. And he's like, well, my car's out front. And Charlie's like, yeah, we can go get the ice, right? He thinks he's flirting with him. Maya and Alani are, and to Charlie's credit, that's where I thought this was going to. I thought they were flirting. So I'm not like, I watched the whole episode, so now I know that he wasn't being flirty, but it did feel very flirty and complimenty, and like he was very touchy-feely. Okay, so I understood where Charlie was coming from. Maya and Alani are snooping upstairs, and Alani says that celebrities have the best upstairses, which is where the title comes from. Maya says the upstairs is where the Diddy stuff happened. Now, I actually don't know the details of the Diddy stuff, but I mean, fuck that guy. They open a door, and Elijah Wood is there watching The Simpsons. Alani freaks out and like runs out, and then she's like, we need to go downstairs. And Maya's like, why are you so nervous? This is your celebrity crush. Why are you like not embracing this? And Alani says the famous people make her nervous. And Maya's like, Robert De Niro taught you how to swim. And Alani replies, dude, that's so different. He's just my dad's friend who's like good at swimming. He was in Shark Tale. Like, I love her. This is so funny to me. Maya's like, this is the universe giving you a second chance. We're not going to run into him again for like 7 years. And Alani's like, yeah, and by then I'll be old and living on the west side. She's like, okay, rude to the west side. The west side's lovely. I don't live on the west side. They go back in to his room, and Elijah pauses The Simpsons. He's like super chill. I'm like, well, you're not freaking out that there are two strange women in your room. But they introduce themselves, and he asks if they've ever seen The Simpsons. Like, super cordial, super nice, super friendly. Like, okay, Elijah Wood, so nice. I will say, not one mention of Yellow Jackets, and I understand that's like a minor part for him, okay? Like, I understand he did a million other, like, things. But, like, earlier, Charlie was, like, talking about roles he's been in. Obviously, they mentioned The Lord of the Rings many times. Not one Yellow Jackets mentioned. And again, I understand. You think Elijah Wood, you don't think Yellow Jackets. But I think Yellow Jackets, so I do. I'm like, that's Walter. That's oomph. He's not oomph, to be clear. But anyways, Charlie and Lucas, the guy, are in his car, in Lucas's car, and he's like, I'm cool to drive. I'm on this acne medication, so I haven't been drinking. I was drinking non-alcoholic mezcal. And then Charlie puts his hand on the guy's leg, and he's like, oh, this happens a lot. And Charlie's like, what, do you have a boyfriend? And he's like, no, I'm not gay. I'm Catholic. He says he's super open-hearted, so people just confuse him for a gay guy. And Charlie's like, no, it's not because you're open-hearted. It's because you were touching my arms and my chest, and you invited me to leave the party with you. And Lucas is like, yeah, to get ice. He puts it in a gas station in the GPS, and he's like, okay, it's 37 minutes away. Oh, and I need to get a banana because I need something to take my big pill with. If I was Charlie, I'd bail. I don't know why he stayed in the car with this guy. I mean, I would never be in this position, but I'm like, with peace and love, I am not going to be in a car with you 37 minutes there, 37 minutes back. I barely know you. What's the point of this? I'm not running this errand with you, okay? I run enough errands. I don't drink because I drive everywhere. I wouldn't be in this situation, but I would genuinely be like, I don't like other people driving me, which is why I never drink. I don't go out, but I feel like if I did, I would prioritize. I'd be like, I would rather stay sober and drive myself home than have a couple drinks and then have to worry about Uber. I feel like I would hate that. I like the peace of after a night out in any capacity. Again, Tuesday night I went to a drive-in theater, and that wasn't a night out in that capacity. But I enjoyed the serenity of driving home after an outing, or a social event. I don't know. I'm overthinking this, but I just don't understand why Charlie wouldn't bail. Maya and Alani are in Elijah Wood's bedroom. He's sharing his favorite clips. He pulls up something from Superbad, and Maya's like, oh yeah, I remember this scene. His license plate says McLovin, and Elijah Wood's like, how did you know that? Is this your favorite movie? And Maya's like, no, I just watched it once when I was younger. And he's very impressed by her memory. He can't remember anything. He says his memory is really bad. And Alani's like, that must be so hard for you because you have to remember so many words for your job. And he's like, no, lines are different. I remember super easily. It's everything else that I don't have space for. And then he mentions that he met Jonah Hill once. And then they ask him how he usually meets people, and he's like, well, it's hard to make friends because he's not good in big groups. There's so many names to remember, but he loves a trio. So this is perfect. And they're bonding with Elijah Wood. Meanwhile, Quen brings Tallulah to a room, and there are TikTok guys in there for her. It's a whole studio to film a TikTok. And she asks them to play some music to pump her up. He has some statistics of where the music has been doing well and all of these things. And then she plays the sound that her and Tallulah are going to act out, and she does it super quickly, and then she's like, okay, do you have your line? And I fully thought Tallulah was not going to have her line, and it would be a disaster. But she got her line right away, and they play it back, and Tallulah's like, that's great, it's so perfect, Maya's going to be so excited. And Quen's like, it doesn't pop, we need to make it pop, we should switch outfits. And Tallulah's like, okay, yeah, we'll do a few more, and then we'll get the shrimp. And Quen is like, I never said there was shrimp. And at this point, I would also bail. I'd be like, you literally said that I could eat after this. Because one thing about me is if I am bold enough to be like, oh, you have food, we need to do this and get food. At that point, I'm hungry. I'm not me when I'm hungry. Those Snickers commercials, so true. But anyways, Elijah Wood tells Maya and Alani that when they opened the door, he could tell that they'd known each other for a long time. They look alike. Maya's like, yeah, we get that all the time. And she mentions the Q&A from the acting class, and he feels really bad that he doesn't remember Alani or Maya, but specifically Alani, because Maya's like, Alani asked you a question, and he's like, I'm so sorry that I didn't remember it. He's going to make himself remember, and he explains that he has this thing called a memory palace, which is you pick a space you're really familiar with. For him, it's his childhood home, and then you, in your brain, go through the rooms and you put a memory or a detail in those rooms. So then you just have to walk into the room and visualize the thing. And he does an example of his business manager's son's name. He walks into his room. The Queen of England is there, and she's wearing a t-shirt with his name, and the name is Cole, I believe. I don't remember. I didn't write it down. And I didn't put it in my memory palette, so sorry. His eyes are closed while he's doing this. And while his eyes are closed, Alani like scoots up from the floor. He talks about how he's putting them in his sun room, so he'll always remember tonight. And then when he opens his eyes, he like notices that she's closer. And he's like, where are my manners? You guys don't have to sit on the floor. You can sit on the bed, but you have to go put on robes, no street clothes on the bed. The robes are in the bathroom. Charlie and the guy, Lucas, are at the gas station, and he's like impressed by Charlie being a stylist, asks how that works, and Charlie's like, well, I'm freelance, so every week is different. They get the ice. The guy's clearly annoying Charlie. He's like, well, how much ice is it? Like, I don't know how much ice people normally have in their drinks. I've never thought to count, and I don't drink. But, like, he's, like, clearly being annoying, and Charlie's like, we'll just get 3 bags. That should be plenty. While they're checking out, these girls come into the gas station and ask this guy for a photo. And he's like, what was that? And Lucas is like, I'm a singer. I went by my last name. It was a thing with Christian girls. I think he went by his last name, Landry. Anyways, it was a big thing with Christian girls on TikTok, but it's gotten more wide. And Charlie's like, how wide? And he's like, well, I have 4 million on TikTok. And Charlie's suddenly not annoyed with him. He's like, we need to get you that banana. In the bathroom of Elijah Wood's house, Alani and Maya are excited because they think this is their first 3-way. They're like, we're really about to have a 3-way with Elijah Wood. Now, maybe it's just because I myself am somebody who, I don't like having inside clothes on the bed either. Like, I have those limits too, where I'm like, the inside clothes, I wouldn't wear jeans that I just wore outside on my bed. Like, you know what I mean? I understand the inside clothes, outside clothes thing. I even sometimes when I'm fostering kittens, if they're having digestive issues, I'm fostering kittens right now actually, but like luckily they're not having any digestive issues. But like I've had times where like I'm fostering kittens and they're having digestive issues and I'm like, I have different kitten clothes. I'm not even wearing these outside, but I'm like, if I'm wearing them in my bathroom where my kittens are having digestive issues, I'm not wearing them outside of the bathroom because I'm like, what if I accidentally have like a little bit of like poop on them? I don't know. That's really gross. But like that is just the reality of fostering kittens sometimes when they're like really struggling in that regard, where it's just like, because they're on top of me all the time and it's just like, so I don't even, I'm like, if these are my kitten clothes and then these are my bed clothes, outside clothes, like I understand that. I'm like, I'm not mixing and matching. So them thinking maybe it was the robe thing. I don't know. I would just never assume that this means, anyways. But they did. They think, okay, we're going to have a threesome. And Alani's like, oh, you have to text Dylan. So she texts Dylan and he says yes, but like he's super specific about boundaries. We don't find out what any of them are. The only thing she says is that Alani has to do the penetration, but we don't know about the rest. She's like, he has a lot of specifics, but the overall answer is yes. Will we maybe in the next episode see some kind of confrontation? I mean, nothing happened, spoiler, but I don't know. Anyways, then Alani's like, maybe we should kiss now because like we don't want our first kiss to be in front of Elijah. So they quick peck. And then back at the gas station, Charlie is filling up Lucas's tank and he's listening to a song and says it's really good. And then Lucas is like, it's a shame that you're freelance because I have a residency in Vegas coming up and I don't know what the style is going to be. I'm really looking to create something fun and inspiring. And Charlie's like, that's crazy because I was just thinking this morning that I really want a project that's both fun and inspiring. You said inspiring, right? Like this is so meant to be. Tell me more about this residency. Like clearly Charlie, now that this guy has something to give him, he's like super chummy with him. Maya and Alani are back in the bathroom. Maya and Alani have changed into the robes. They're naked under the robes, except Alani still has her underwear on to leave a little mystery, and then Maya puts hers back on as well. They walk into Elijah's room, which is like connected. The bathroom is like connected. He's turned away and he starts playing All Star from Shrek. And they sit on his bed. They position themselves all sexy. Maya like clears her throat and he turns around and he's like, you took your clothes off under the robes? And Maya's like, yes. And he freaks out. He's like, now I have to destroy the robes. I can't believe that this happened again. And this was a really interesting detail. He's like, I can't believe this happened again. And then we hear Gwen saying, again. And she's like instructing Tallulah how to do the TikTok. And they're going again and again. We cut back to Maya and Alani. They're apologizing to Elijah. They didn't realize it was an actual germ thing. Again, I would always err on the side of caution. They thought they were sexy robes. He says every girl thinks she's the only girl in the world who wants to fuck Sweet Elijah. No one wants to be friends with Sweet Elijah. I love the fact that he called himself Sweet Elijah. That was so funny to me. Maya says that they do being friends is better. Sex like makes her tired, and Alani's like, I don't want to hear about your personal stuff. Elijah, we're so sorry. It was very funny scene. He says this is why he can't go downstairs in his own house. Back to Quen coaching Tallulah how to do the TikTok. Then back to Maya and Alani still apologizing. He's mad. They're stuck in his memory palace now forever. Quen finally likes a take, but her assistant Natalie comes in and is like, Landry, and that's Lucas. I think he goes by, yeah. Landry is here. She should just do a TikTok with him. And then Quen's like, oh yeah, amazing. Delete everything. She tells to her TikTok guys to delete everything they did. And then Quen's like, do you want to come with me to Tallulah? And she's like, no, I really need to pee. And then she opens another door and she happens upon a Click Farm room. I hated this. I'm like, this is like so unserious to me. Again, this is something where I'm like, I don't imagine that she actually has a Click Farm. It's just supposed to be like a more exaggerated version of herself. Anyways, Elijah Wood is like angry, but he's singing All Star. He starts turning up the volume and they're like, can you turn it down? And he just turns it up louder. He's singing All Star very loudly. Maya grabs her bag with her foot and tells Alani that they need to leave. And as they're leaving, Alani tells him she'll always love him in Elven. I don't know what the language is. The Lord of the Rings language. Then Quen is telling Tallulah that she needs to learn like all of this, like the Click Farm stuff, the all of that. And Tallulah's kind of like, I think my fans like it when I'm spontaneous and I fuck up. Like, I don't think I need to be like this intentional about things. And then she mentions a video of Quen chipping her tooth. And she's like, well, that wasn't a fuck up. My dentist pre-chipped my tooth. So it's like, again, for me, it's like I would do something, if I were to be a content creator full time, I'm like, I would have like a level that was like thought out and intentional and like professional, but I don't think I would manufacture it. Like, I think there's a difference for me where I'm like, I think it's healthy to have some kind of a like, this is what I'm trying to present. These are my boundaries with the internet, because at the end of the day, these are strangers to you as much as you like form a community of fans or whatever. There needs to be like a healthy boundary, right? But I feel like there's a difference between being professional and like intentional and then being fake. You know, who cares if your tooth is chipped? Not like, that's not interesting enough to pre-chip the tooth. Who the fuck cares? Anyways, Quen says that if she stops for a moment, she'll disappear, like in regards to Tallulah, and then asks Tallulah, like, is anybody else looking out for your career? Like, does anybody care about your happiness? And Tallulah's like, actually, yes. Because she realizes, like, obviously Maya does. She leaves, she runs into Maya and Alani in their robes in the hallway and tells them they have to leave the party. They find Charlie downstairs and he's like, where have you been? And they're like, we were upstairs. And he says, but that's where the Diddy stuff happened. Alani is on her phone. She's like, there are no shoe places open on DoorDash right now. This is a nightmare. Maya and Tallulah hug. They're like, I missed you. I love you. Like, it's nice. I'll get to my final thoughts because we're almost done with the episode. But they hug. Tallulah says there's a chance that she's in a Quen TikTok. They run into an Uber. And Maya's like, Elijah Wood could have killed us. And Charlie's like, any man can kill you at any time. And then their Uber driver begins to laugh maniacally. And that's how the episode ends. Well, actually, Charlie is like, can you not laugh like that? And that's how the episode ends. So what I wanted to say, like literally 2 seconds ago before I stopped myself, is that I mentioned last week that based off the preview, it seemed like maybe Tallulah was going to start to question Maya as a manager. I think, interestingly enough, that is not where this episode went. Like, it ended very much with the opposite of what I thought it would end with, of like Tallulah being like, Maya's actually a really good manager and Maya is looking out for my best interest and she understands my content and what I want to be as an influencer more than like I am giving her credit for. And I like that. I think that's a very interesting thing. I don't remember very clearly what the preview was because I have to be honest, I watched the episode on Sunday. I'm recording this Wednesday and I rewatched it like a couple days ago as well and like took my notes a little bit ago. So I'm like, I genuinely don't remember what the preview for the next episode was, but I know Lade Meester's character is back, which is exciting. I think they do a double date and then I don't remember what the rest of them are doing, but I know that Dylan and Maya are going on like a double date with her boss and her boss's husband, which will be really fun. We also see a clip of Maya like getting some kind of brand deal and feeling really good about her work. I don't remember what the Tallulah, Alani, Charlie storylines are going to be, but I'm excited to see Charlie explore this thing with this Christian singer. Like, I think it'll be interesting to see him be a stylist for like a different kind of client. He seems obviously very down because he wants like that kind of gig, but I wonder if we'll see some kind of switch from him where he's like, I don't care. Like, I don't know, because I don't feel like I know this character well enough to like say that there'll be some kind of reversal for him where he's like, I don't care if it's a Vegas residency. I don't actually believe in this guy's message, so I don't want to be a part of it. I don't know if we'll get that from him. I don't know if that's what he's meant to be as a character, or if he's going to be like, I don't know. It's so early that I don't know, but I'm excited to see the double date storyline and stuff like that. And I love Alani, so I'm excited to see where she goes, but I don't remember what the rest of the preview was. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say about I Love LA, season 1, episode 4. Moving on to Wicked for Good. So as I said earlier, I went to a drive-in theater to watch it, and it was so good. Like, the drive-in theater experience was so good. I've never been to one, and I've been wanting to. Like, my sister found this place a while ago, and there just hadn't been a moment where there was a movie that I cared enough to go to do it. Like, I was kind of honestly, like, I was like intimidated, and it just happened to work out perfectly that I had Tuesday off. And I love Wicked, so I'm like, because here's the thing, I haven't seen a movie in theaters in years, just because watching movies indoors is like too big of a COVID risk for like the reward. Like, I would rather watch a movie in my home than like risk getting sick by being indoors that long. And so I just haven't watched. The last time I watched a movie in theaters was, I believe it was In the Heights, and that was, after the pandemic had started. But that was like 2021, and I had just gotten vaccinated, and I feel like I was in this, like I felt like the vaccine would protect me. I didn't know as much about COVID as I know now. I also feel like, not to be cynical, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like we're at a point where I feel like people took COVID more seriously in 2021, where I do just generally feel like I was safer to go in public for something like that than I would be now, because I feel like people have swung so far the other way, where now they don't even care if they're sick and they're exposing people to things. Like, people just go out when they're sick all the time now. So I just like, anyways, sorry but I just haven't been to a movie in a while, and it's a really cool experience and it was so fun, and I genuinely want to just go see more movies that way, even if they're movies that I'm not as interested in as Wicked, because it was just such a fun experience. And genuinely, like, the drive-in movie, it was so good because, one, it's super accessible for somebody who like doesn't want to be indoors for a long period of time with like a bunch of strangers and risk getting sick, but also because you're still watching it on the big screen. But like, me and my sister got to talk all the way through it, which was super fun. Wicked is a very interesting musical for me in terms of like the relationship I have with it, because I know it like really well in terms of the music, but I have to be honest, I watched the musical on Broadway, and that was the first experience, or not Broadway, on the West End, and that was the first experience I had with it. And then after that, obviously, I listened to the soundtrack a million times, and I was super into Wicked when I was younger, but I never watched like a bootleg, and so I genuinely don't remember the overarching plot of like all the minutia, if you will. Like, obviously I remember that like Fiyero is the Scarecrow and Bach is the Tin Man, and like I remember that stuff, obviously. I remember like that the Wizard and I is obviously foreshadowing when she's like, when people see me they will scream, I'll be so happy I could melt. Like, I knew those things, obviously. But I genuinely, and I will say, the plot of part 1 didn't surprise me. Like, when I watched part 1, I was like, okay, I remembered this. But I genuinely didn't remember part 2 very clearly. And so it was really fun to watch. And also they added music. So I was like, the whole time I was like, do I just not remember this? Or was it added? Because I thought we were going to open with Thank Goodness. And we didn't open with Thank Goodness. We opened with, and I do think this scene was added. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that this was added. We opened with them. They were paving the yellow brick road, like the animals were. and they were being abused while they were doing it. I think it was some cows, I don't remember, but like they were being like literally tortured while they were building this yellow brick road. And then Elphaba comes and like helps the animals by taking on the people who are abusing them and like throwing them in paint. And I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to hate her for what? She's like, I love her, I love this. So that was a very interesting way to open that, and also the visual of them paving the yellow brick road. I really like that scene. And then we get quite a little bit of introduction to where the characters are before we even get to Thank Goodness. Which, am I wrong that that's the opening song for the second act? Like, am I misremembering? I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. No, I'm not wrong. Okay. And so I was like, the stuff before that, I was like, I think a lot of this is added. I am not an expert, but I liked the beginning of the movie before we got to Thank Goodness. To be honest, I thought that was like really necessary. Like, we got an insight into how Elphaba's been, how Glinda's been. That was interesting to me. I liked it. And then Thank Goodness I obviously loved. That's one of my favorite songs in the musical. And I will say it was really interesting the way, because when I listen to the track, and maybe it's just because in the musical, the stage performance, unless I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure like you don't really see the crowd of people the same. Like, I think maybe there's a few voices, but it's not like a crowd where visually you can tell that she's singing to people. But in my brain, the part of Thank Goodness where she's like talking about how it's not simple and like getting your dreams is a little more complicated, like that part, I always thought that was like an internal thing, but she sings it out to the crowd the same way she did the beginning when she's like, we're celebrating. Thank goodness. We get at the beginning, before we get Thank Goodness, we get Glinda getting her bubble and Madame Orville being like, they'll think that you're magical this way. We want the Good Witch to also be airborne because Elphaba is airborne or whatever. So again, there were like little things that I thought were really interesting. We get like a flashback to Glinda's childhood and like wanting to be magical, but she's not. And all of these things I think were an interesting addition. But Thank Goodness, in my brain, in the stage performance, I'm like, I don't feel like she's singing to this crowd of people. She's like, that felt like an internal thing, whereas here it's like, it felt like a very personal thing that she was then just singing. I'm like, I don't feel like she's singing to the people that getting your dreams as fun as it seems, or whatever the lyric is, I'm so sorry, is a little more complicated. Like, I don't feel like she's singing to the crowd of people when she says that. Am I wrong? In my brain, that's like an aside of like, that's an internal thing where she's like performing and she's like, thank goodness, like we're so happy. And then she's like, it's actually not that simple. Also, they're all talking about Elphaba. They're like pure water could melt her. And obviously Fiyero gets upset and he and Glinda go to the side. And then they have a little conversation, which I thought was super telling. And I really like this moment where he's like, why don't we just run away? Like, we don't have to be here. And she's like, they need me to lift their spirits. And he's like, be honest, like, you can't resist this. She's like, maybe I can't. Who could? And then he's like, we know somebody who could. Obviously, he's talking about Elphaba. And she's like, obviously, I miss her too. And he's like, I need to find her because if not, because he's like in charge of leading the team of people who are hunting her down, because he obviously wants to find her and save her. But anyways, he eventually leaves, and that's when she does the second part, which I, in my brain, always felt like was an aside. Like, in my brain, if I was directing this movie, I would have had Fiyero leave, and then she sings this little part about how getting your dreams is a little more complicated. I would have had her sing that behind the stage or wherever she's giving this speech from. I would have had her sing that there after Fiyero left, instead of going back out and then singing that to the crowd. But maybe that's just me. Because getting your dreams, it's strange, but it seems a little well complicated. There's a kind of a sort of cost. There's a couple of things get lost. There are bridges you cross, you don't know that you cross them. And if that joy, that thrill doesn't thrill like you think it will, like, I thought that was an internal thing. So I would have, if I was directing this, I would have had that be an aside. I wouldn't have had that be to the crowd, continued to the crowd. But that's just my note. The Boq and Nessa story, I don't remember this from the stage musical because, again, I've like never watched a bootleg. My only way of staying in touch with the source material was the original Broadway recording, and I watched a lot of performances too, specifically of the people that I watched on the West End. I like watched them perform a lot, like YouTube videos of that, but like I knew obviously that Bach got turned into the Tin Man, and I knew that he and Nessa had a strained relationship, but I don't remember the details of like their relationship. So I am unsure if the storyline of her making it so Munchkins cannot leave Oz, I don't know if it's new. I don't think so. But maybe it was. I don't know. I thought that was really interesting where it was like they seem tense and then he goes to leave Oz and then like not only is it or Munchkinland, he goes to leave Munchkinland and now it's like no animals or Munchkins can leave. I'm like, what the hell? What? Like a whole group of people? Like, damn, you didn't want him leaving that bad? I don't know. It's really funny too because I understand why Nessa is like, he has this thing for Glinda. I don't want him to pursue her. But it's like, Nessa, he has no chance with Glinda. If I was Nessa, I'd be like, yeah, go strike out with Glinda and then fuck you. Like, I don't know. You're not going to get Glinda. So, like, good luck, I guess. But anyways, there's a lot of resentment growing between Bach and Nessa. Elphaba eventually comes and she sees Nessa and she, like, makes her fly for a little bit. In the staged show, she makes her walk, but they changed the storyline, obviously, which I think was good. And this is when Bach is kind of like, well, you won't need me anymore because you're like, you know, you can fly now. And he's like, when I saw that Glinda was going to get married, like, I want to go be able to confess my love to her, basically. And she gets mad at him. She starts reading words out of the grimoire, which she can't read. So she ends up shrinking his heart. His heart is shrinking. And then Nessa's like, Elphaba, you need to stop this. And she's like, I can't stop it. Like when a spell from the grimoire is cast, you can't reverse it. So he's like, so she's like, I need to find another spell. So she like does something. She tries to save him. And she turns him into a Tin Man because this way he won't need a heart. And you know what? She kind of slayed. Like, God forbid. I mean, at the bare minimum, she saved her sister from, like, murder charges, manslaughter charges. Honestly, probably could have been murder because, like, technically she did kill him by accident, but, like, you were already, like, restricting his movement and stuff. An interesting detail, too, is they're talking about... Bach and Nessa talk about Elphaba a little bit, like a couple scenes before this happens, and like before he tries to leave town and then realizes that Munchkins are like forbidden from leaving. She's the governor, by the way, so like she did that because somebody comes in and is like, Munchkin Land is the only like district. I don't know how the geography and the politics work in Oz, okay? That's something that I'll get into a little rant in a second. But, like, how the fuck does that work in Oz? Does anybody know? Because I don't. Hello. It has been 2 days since I recorded the beginning of this podcast. I'm really sorry. Quick disclaimer before I jump right back into talking about Wicked for Good. I am recording this in a different spot. Like, I normally record in bed, but I'm recording this from my desk because I normally record after work, but I'm recording this on my dinner break. So maybe I can get some editing done after work because I'm finishing recording this on Friday. And anyway, so where I last left off talking about Wicked, I was talking about Nessa and Bach, and what I had started saying before I trailed off is I'm really interested, and maybe I should read the book because I know obviously it's not like a one-to-one adaptation, I'm aware, but I think that there might be some insight into the world building that like could help me because I'm confused about the geography of this place, like how the government works. Like, the wizard is in charge, but there's no elections. At the end of the movie, Glinda takes over, and I'm like, nobody elected you, though. How is Nessa the governor? Her dad was the governor, right? Like, Elphaba and Nessa's dad was a governor. Obviously, Elphaba's real dad is not her dad, but, like, he was a governor, so was it just passed on to her? I don't understand the and maybe some people do, but I don't understand the geography or the politics. I don't understand the landscape of Oz. I find it confusing. But anyways, Nessa and Bach's, again, as I was saying, not yesterday, 2 days ago. I don't remember in the staged musical how accurate this is to their relationship, but I thought it was really interesting the way all of that happened. Like, he couldn't leave town. She got upset. She shrunk his heart. Elphaba comes to say hi to Nessa, and Nessa's mad that Elphaba didn't come back for their dad's funeral, which, like, why would she? He hated her. Please be for real. And also, she's, like, isolated, and I don't remember what word I was trying to use, but she's like a pariah. Why would she come back into town for her father's funeral who hated her when that could make her whereabouts known? Like, she's off in hiding. That doesn't make any sense. And also, it's not like Nessa, as her sister, took any opportunity to be like, my sister is a good person, and try to understand where Elphaba's coming from, and like try to empathize with her side. Like Fiyero, who has no blood loyalty to Elphaba, who knew her for a significantly less period of time, who wasn't cared for and prioritized by Elphaba in the way that Nessa was. Like, Elphaba did so much to make sure Nessa was good. Like, she cared so deeply about Nessa. She felt guilty about the ways that her being green impacted Nessa. Like, she cared so much about Nessa and had so much loyalty to her sister. And when push came to shove and Elphaba was a pariah, she did nothing to try to understand where she was coming from. All she wanted to do was distance herself from that, which is why when we see that scene with Bok and Nessa, when one of the people comes in and is like, Munchkin Town is the only town that hasn't passed this legislation about animals not being able to travel. Bok is like, would you really do that? And she's like, I need to prove that I'm not wicked like my sister, right? So I just, why would she come back? It's not like you're particularly on her side. I understand even more so why Glinda and Fiyero would be like, why isn't she coming back to see us? Because they, at least on some level, care. Like, I don't feel like Nessa has love for Elphaba the same way that Elphaba has love for Nessa, or how Fiyero and Glinda have love for Elphaba even. Like, as much as Glinda is very flawed in the way that she handles things, at least when Fiero's talking to her, she's like, I'm worried about her too. I don't want her to get caught as well. Like, I don't want her to, Glinda wants Elphaba to change and be part of the wizard stuff. And obviously that within itself is a deep misunderstanding of Elphaba's wants and perspective on life, because Glinda's like, why don't you just like deny that he's a fraud? Like, you can still be with the wizard, what you've worked and waited for. You can have all that you ever wanted. And Elphaba's like, I don't want it anymore. Now I'm just quoting the lyric, but like, you know what I mean? Like, Glinda's like, you don't have to give up on this dream. You can still have it. And Elphaba's like, no, this isn't what I wanted though. This is a lie, you know? So even Glinda's desire for Elphaba to be around and to come around, that is misguided, but at least she seems to have that desire. And I like Nessa's character. I think she's very interesting, and I understand. But anyways, I don't blame Elphaba for not coming back to their dad's funeral. I do believe I talked about this, but Elphaba like helps Nessa fly. Then Bok comes in and he's like, Nessa, you're finally happy. Like, I'm not going to be as needed anymore. I want to go confess to Glinda, which, like, again, why? Why? Maybe I'm just too old and I'm too past this, like, I want somebody and they don't want me back thing. But it's like, and I feel the same way about Nessa. It's like, Bok doesn't want to be with you, so why do you want to be with Bok? Glinda doesn't want to be with you, Bok. Glinda doesn't want to be with you. She doesn't even know your name. And why don't you want better for yourself? You should want to be with somebody who wants to be with you. Like, you just want to be with Glinda because on paper you think she's what you want. Why do you genuinely? What's enjoyable about being in a relationship with somebody who doesn't like you? Nothing. You're fantasizing about them. They're an idea of a person. They're not a real person. It really pisses me off. It really pisses me off. Like, Glinda doesn't want to be with you. I also understand that Nessa's not being very nice to you. But anyways, Nessa shrinks his heart and Elphaba is just trying to save him, like she always does. God forbid Elphaba tries to save somebody. Like, I feel so bad for her. And I don't remember if I mentioned this when I was recording this, because I never do this thing where I record a podcast and then 2 days later I finish it. But yesterday was Thanksgiving and my parents are in town, and I genuinely was like, I was also working. So I'd work and then I saw my parents and I just like, and then I had a nice little evening with my sister after as well. So like, well, I mean, my sister was here when I saw my parents, but like, anyways, My point is, I didn't end up recording yesterday. Most of the time when I'm finishing recording the podcast, I remember what I said last night fairly clearly, and I genuinely don't fully remember. So I'm sorry about that. But there's a moment at the beginning during Thank Goodness, when they're celebrating Glinda the Good, Elphaba comes and she's like, this is the perfect day to give the message. And she writes in the sky, our wizard lies, because she wants the people of Oz to know that he's a liar, right? And then Madame Morble, flip it around, get Wicked Witch, sorry. I'm obsessed with that joke. But Madame Morble changes it in the sky to be Oz dies and be like, she's threatening us, which, such a fascinating way to portray propaganda. I really, really, really like this movie in that regard. It has a lot of plot holes, but I feel like messaging wise, like who the wizard is and lying and that part of the movie hit harder for me. I really enjoyed this part more. I'm excited to do a double feature. Like eventually when it's all out, I'm excited to have like a fun movie night. Like if you've ever watched How I Met Your Mother, there's like an episode where they do this thing of like every 3 years we get together and we watch Star Wars, like all of them, and then we kind of discuss like where we think we'll be in 3 years from now, or maybe it's every 6 years, but I think it's every 3 years. I kind of want to do that with Wicked. Like when it's all out, I kind of want to do that because I really liked it. But anyways, I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. I really liked the messaging of like in that regard. And then there's a scene where Elphaba goes to see Glinda and Fiyero before they're like, or first she goes to see Glinda. And this is when Wonderful happens and like the song Wonderful happens. And this was the part of the movie that I was like, this is too real, because it's like they don't care if you're lying to them. She thinks that if she reveals that he's a fraud, that'll change the way they view him and the things that he's saying. But it won't. Like it won't change and it's like upsetting because of how relatable it is to our current climate. I don't know. It anchored me because I'm like, this is so true, but it's so upsetting. But anyways, Elphaba confronts the wizard. He sings his little wonderful song, and then he's like, with you by my side, because basically Elphaba is trying to get the message across, which is why she's going to the wedding, because she's like, everybody will be here. This is a perfect opportunity to get the message across to them. But the wizard, she tries to talk to Glinda, and Glinda's like, please, just like, again, trying to convince her. And then the wizard, and they sing Wonderful. And after that, Glinda's like super excited and she's going to get ready for her wedding. And the wizard does this like good faith gesture. Like he untraps the flying monkeys, right? And so Elphaba's like, okay, she believes him too much, because I'm like, I would not believe he's a liar. So why is he now telling the truth? I would not believe him. That was very confusing to me. Why are you believing him? Super, super confusing. But you know what? Elphaba, she's just too good. Like her heart is too pure. So she genuinely believes him that he is going to change his ways. The thing that I found confusing, and maybe I need to rewatch the first movie, but he's like, with you by my side, I won't have to blame the animals. It's like, what were you blaming the animals for? I'm sure that I'm just stupid and I forgot that, but it's like, that's the part that I was like, okay, if Elphaba's by your side, then like what? There will be power, so then you don't have to like... I also, again, would like to know some background on like how Oz, like the wizard came to be the wizard. It's not like they're elected. He built this whole city. Did he build this whole city? I'm very confused. And maybe this is known information and I've just completely forgotten it because I've never thought much about the wizard, because to be honest, I don't care about him. Even when I watched the musical and I've listened to the soundtrack for years and years and years now, I never gravitated towards the wizard as a character. So I think I never really analyzed him as a character and thought about these motivations because I don't understand him. The other characters I understood, and I did like getting a bit more background into Glinda's history, because from my recollection, that's not included in the original Broadway musical, where we see her as a child like wanting to be magical, and her mom being like, people love you, like that's magical within itself, or something like that, you know. I thought that was a nice detail that we got a bit more into Glinda's character. But I feel like even without that, I understood Glinda. I'm very confused about the wizard. How did he come to be? How does government work? Why? It's an unnecessary thing, but it genuinely like confuses me. And I guess the whole point is that it's an allegory and it's not supposed to be like, it's supposed to be a reference. So you're supposed to understand that these charismatic con men come to power. Like, I understand that. Okay, I can see you. So I guess if I'm just like using it as it's alluding to something, then it won't bother me as much, because I'm like trying to view him as a character within himself, and I'm like, okay, but how did he get this power? Also, Fiero's a prince, so do they have... I'm like, where is Oz geographically? Who cares? I'm overthinking it. But that part did hit really close to home. That part did hit, that was too real. And I really like the addition of... I will say the Glinda song that we get later in the musical, I didn't like it as much, but Elphaba's No Place Like Home, I really liked it. Like, that was good narratively. I don't know music-wise if I like it as much as the rest of the musical. I think it's hard when there's a new song to a classic musical that you've already have a connection to, because I'm like, it kind of feels like, not completely, but it kind of feels like when Taylor Swift would have a song from The Vault, and I'm like, okay, well, this isn't from Red to me, but technically it's from Red, from The Vault. So, like, I think this is something that, like, right now, I don't know how I feel about it in relation to the rest of the soundtrack, because I have such a history with the rest of the soundtrack. But anyways, but No Place Like Home, I liked a lot better. Like, I felt like it was better written, and narratively, the place in the story that it went made a lot of sense. That I really liked. I feel like that gave us an insight into Elphaba's character that we didn't have before. The Glinda song I didn't feel like it gave us an insight into the character more than like the flashback did. So I personally think if we were gonna get that song, maybe we should have gotten it when we got that flashback. But I guess it's called The Girl in the Bubble, and when she has that flashback, it's when she's getting the bubble. So this is supposed to be like after there's been a bit of time with her in the bubble. But I just felt like narratively, the point where we're getting that reflection from Glinda, it didn't hit that hard. And maybe if it was a better written song narratively, it felt like they wrote that song and then they decided later where they were going to place it, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't feel like it was a reaction to the stuff happening in the moment. It felt like, maybe that's just me, but that's my take on the song. No Place Like Home, I felt like it fit well into the place in the movie that it was, in the story. Like, narratively, I felt like it made sense, because it's kind of like an insight into why Elphaba's trying so hard, right? Like, she is still trying to better this place and dedicate this place, while the animals are like fleeing. There's a bunch of people who are like, this place is untenable for me, I'm leaving. I thought that was very well placed. Glinda's song, not so much. But anyways, I kind of went backwards. I forgot to mention that. But anyways, at the wedding, Fiero and Glinda are obviously like getting married. Elphaba, one of the monkeys, opens like a trap door for her, and so she goes down, and there's a huge basement of like animals in cages, so many more animals in cages. So clearly the ones he released were not like the actual animals, or even a drop in the bucket, right? So Elphaba gets really upset. She frees all the animals, and they kind of stampede the wedding. The Elphaba, I don't know what they're called. No, like the Elphaba hunting team that Fiero is leading. They go and find her, and Fiero sends them off to get water, right? Because at this point, it's like water will melt her. So he sends them off to get as much water as possible, and then he flips the gun to the wizard and tells the wizard to get in like the cage, locks the wizard away, and is like gonna leave with Elphaba. So he leaves with Elphaba. Glinda's obviously devastated, and that's when we get I'm Not That Girl reprise. Now, do I feel bad for Glinda in this moment? Like, yeah, that kind of sucks, okay? But I think it's hard for me because I'm not particularly invested in the Fiero-Glinda relationship, to the point where it's like, obviously cheating is wrong, okay? Obviously the thing is, he wasn't really cheating on her, and this was kind of he didn't formally break up with her, but I feel like this was supposed to be I'm going with her. And also, in his defense, he did try to communicate that he wanted to leave, that he wasn't enjoying this dynamic. She decided that they were engaged. Kind of feels like a sham we're getting married thing because people need happiness. That was the kind of vibe, So, you know what I mean? It wasn't I didn't really feel like they truly loved each other, to the point where she was he felt like a status symbol, like an accessory to her. And obviously, I think it just hurts that I think on some level Glinda does have some level of maybe not shame. I don't know what word it is, but it's obviously Elphaba is much more bold, and she's much more firm in her principles, and Fiyero clearly, in my opinion, was signaling that he didn't like the way that Glinda was kind of being a sellout. And I mean, you kind of decided that he was your fiance without telling him. You're getting married as this like big royal happy moment. We need a moment of happiness in these troubling times, right? And the troubling times being that Elphaba is like trying to destroy Oz. I understand where he's coming from. Like, from his perspective, clearly Elphaba's in the moral right. Like, Elphaba's in the correct position, and Glinda is not. And he's been trying to communicate to Glinda that he doesn't agree morally with what she's doing. And she's like, who could resist this? So in this moment, in my opinion, I think he did the better thing. I think he did the better thing. Like, what do you mean? He ran away. He saved Elphaba's life. She was going to die. He saved Elphaba's life. And you know, he saved Elphaba's life in the way that Elphaba wanted her life to be saved, if that makes sense. Because Glinda, from her perspective, is like, I'm trying to save Elphaba's life. But the way she's trying to save Elphaba's life is by getting Elphaba to conform to what Glinda views as like the right way to be happy, as the right thing to do, when that is not what resonates with Elphaba and not what would make Elphaba happy at all. If Elphaba came back and she was trying to live the Glinda life of like everything's, we're keeping up appearances and we're happy and we're merry and we're bright and whatever, that would be a miserable experience for Elphaba. Like, she would be upset the whole time. So, you know what I mean? It's like Fiyero met Elphaba where she was at. She didn't want to be part of this. Glinda's view was like, please be a part of this. You can be a part of this. Fiyero instead was like, you don't need to be a part of this. I'll come with you. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't really blame him in this instance. I don't know. Maybe if I genuinely felt like Fiyero and Glinda were like in love, I would care. But I feel like Glinda cares more about Elphaba than she does Fiyero. And I think she cares about Elphaba, but she's not able to like really see where Elphaba's coming from enough to meet her where she's at. She wants Elphaba to meet her where she's at, but in order for Elphaba to meet Glinda where she's at, the circumstances would have to change drastically, and Glinda's doing nothing to change the circumstances. You know what I mean? She wants Elphaba to change. She doesn't want any of the circumstances to change. Fiyero's saying, I'll change the circumstances, you know? If that makes sense. Anyways, then we have the whole, as long as you're mine. Okay, also when Elphaba and Fiyero leave, Glinda, they're like, how are we gonna get her now? Because they're gone, and then Madame Morble and the rest of the guards come back with the water, and she's like, you're so stupid. How are we going to get her now? And Glinda, clearly in a state of like anger, like, I don't think she did this super consciously. It was still wrong. It was still wrong and really like shitty, and she never said I never should have. Like, later she's like, I didn't mean to, I didn't know. But it's like, you girl, why would you say this? They're like, how can we stop her now? And you obviously in a state of anger and grief, and I understand the emotion of why you said that, but it's like, I don't care how angry I am, I'm not going to throw somebody I care about under the bus even if they hurt me. You know what I mean? Especially to bad people. But I think Glinda doesn't view them as bad people who are going to hurt Elphaba. And I think she doesn't view them that way because she's naive. I don't know. Anyways. Or maybe not naive. I don't know. Anyways, so she, in this moment, is like, use her sister. Elphaba will come if her sister is involved. So Fiyero and Elphaba have their little as long as you're mine scene. I liked it. I saw the one big critique I saw of this movie before going in to watch it was that people didn't like this scene. So I was kind of prepared for like them not really, like them singing away from each other. And then like, I don't know. I thought it was nice. As Long as Your Mind has never been a song that I particularly... I mean, I really liked it, but it was never a song that I was like dying to see their performances of. Like, for example, No Good Deed happens after this. And for me, No Good Deed is like one of my favorite songs. And that is what I was most excited to watch. But anyways, As Long as Your Mind is happening. And while Elphaba and Fiyero are running away, Madame Morble, Wicked Witch, flip it around, you know, she is casting a spell to change the weather to get the tornado, which ultimately kills Nessa. Anyways, so As Long as You're Mine, that was a nice scene. When they're in bed, Elphaba is getting like a vision of the house in the tornado. Nessa is running through the streets yelling Bok, because last we saw Nessa and Bok like stormed off angrily as the Tin Man. And so I guess she's chasing after him. I don't know, but the house falls on her. Then next, we see Glinda send Dorothy on her way with the shoes to see the wizard, right? And then Elphaba shows up and is like, I want those shoes back. That was the last thing I had of my sister. And they fight a little bit. And this was like a tussle, you know? They slap each other. Fiyero comes. The rest of the guards come. And they take Fiyero. He distracts them long enough to get Elphaba to leave, and then they take Fiyero, and this is when No Good Deed happens. And I loved this sequence. No Good Deed, I think, is one of my favorite Wicked songs. For me, it's like an underrated song because there's obviously the classics. I obviously adore Defying Gravity. I love For Good. Like, I like all of the songs. Okay, Wicked is a great musical. But No Good Deed is a song for me that, like, I'm Not That Girl, amazing song. Like, literally loved that song growing up. Anyways, I mean, I still love it, but it's like when you're young and you're a teenager and you're like, that person doesn't like me back, that song really hits. But No Good Deed, one of my favorite songs, and I love the sequence. Basically, they take Fiyero, so she's trying to turn him into, or not, she's not trying to turn him into a scarecrow. She's trying to save him. So she's like, let his bones not break, let him not be able to bleed, let him never die, let him never die. So she's like casting this spell. One of my favorite parts is she goes, Melikanam, nam, Melikanamen. What is this chanting? I don't even know what I'm reading. And then the second half of the song, like, I really like that like frantic trying to save Fiyero. But then afterwards, when she's talking about good deeds and like, what's a good deed? Are you doing it for attention? And she's like, that's why no good deed I will ever do. I'm wicked through and through. I love this song. I love this song so much. And it was one of my favorite sequences too, like the way it was done visually. I really, really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. I love No Good Deed, such a good song. And I think they did it justice. I was so happy. Then, meanwhile, March of the Witch Hunters, that's when they're like, we need to go kill the witch. And the biggest, besides the, like, you know, world building of Oz and politics and geography and like how people get elected and somebody's a governor, but like, is the wizard like a mayor, or is he a president, or is he's just a dictator? You know, in that regard, like, I have a lot of questions. But anyways, besides that stuff, obviously the most confusing thing, and this is not an original thought, is how is the timeline for how Fiyero and Boq join Dorothy. And obviously Dorothy is like not, it's an interesting detail that two of the main characters become the iconic characters from The Wizard of Oz, obviously. But like, when do they join her? Because we see her start walking down the road, the Yellow Brick Road, and Boq is already the Tin Man, but then March of the Witch Hunters is after, and he's like, I have a personal score to settle with the witch. And it's like, so when does she meet him? And when do they meet Fiyero? Is it like really close to the Emerald City? I imagine Fiyero is after, like, maybe she's already been with Boq a little bit. The Cowardly Lion, one of the most annoying, I will say the one thing that I wish that they would change about, like, that they, and I don't wish they changed it because I think I would have been, like, annoyed if they tried to change this. But the one part of Wicked that never hit for me was the Cowardly Lion. Like, I thought it was so compelling that, like, the Tin Man and the Scarecrow, these classic characters, were characters we met. Like, that was so, like, mind-blowing for me at 10 when I watched the musical for the first time. And I still really love it. Logistics aside of when they ran into Dorothy, I love that detail. But I find it really confusing, or not confusing, but like a little, like, that doesn't hit as hard. The lion, he doesn't hit as hard. I'm like, if she let him fight his own battles, maybe he wouldn't be cowardly. It's like, you would have died in a cage. What do you mean? That's so short-sighted. Look at all the animals around you who have lost their power, like their ability to speak, and like, you know, they've been locked up for years and years and years and outcasted from society. They're fleeing Oz to the land beyond Oz because they can't be members of society, but you're mad that she tried to save you from that? Please. Like, that's so annoying to me. Like, I feel like the Cowardly Lion, like, does, and I know that, like, it's not that this isn't a thing that happens. Like, it's not like there aren't people who are, like, marginalized and then have this perspective of, like, I understand that. I understand, like, what he represents. But, like, narratively, I think it would have hit harder. And I guess maybe that's harder to do because it's, like, the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, they're people, but they got, like, I understand. Especially because a big part of the plot is about the animals. So, like, I get why he is the third in the trio. I just maybe wish he was a bit more of an important character because it's kind of like, I don't know. For me personally, by the time I remember him, obviously, but like I feel like when I was watching it and like in the theater when I watched the play, I feel like I was like, oh, I forgot that she released a cub lion. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I just had a bad memory when I was 10. But Anyways, sorry. And March of the Witch Hunters, Ethan Slater really slayed this part when he was like, I have a personal score to settle with the witch. He slayed that, and I also really liked his part with Nessa. Ethan Slater's performance in this part was like really, really good. And okay, this is the moment after this where we get Glinda's song, and it didn't hit that hard for me in the order of events. Maybe that's just me, but it didn't hit that hard. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but the moment that I didn't like the song, first of all, sorry to be a hater, but also unlike No Place Like Home, narratively, the point in the story felt confusing. I'm like, why are we now in this moment getting this introspect? Like, it would have made more sense even, and maybe this wouldn't have hit as hard. Like, maybe they didn't want to mess with the ending too much, but it's like, this actually would have, like, an introspective moment from Glinda would have hit a bit harder after For Good for me. This moment was confusing to me because I feel like the big turning point for Glinda is Elphaba dying. So I just don't, like, this made no, like, in the place in the story, I didn't like it that much. I also didn't like the words, but maybe that's just me. And then obviously Dorothy, Boq, Fiyero, and the Cowardly Lion, they're at the Wizard of Oz. Obviously, the wizard then... Wait, I forgot to mention this, but we see Dorothy meeting the wizard, and he tells her that he needs Elphaba dead and then bring back the broomstick. And that's before March of the Witch Hunters, if I'm remembering correctly. Don't remember 100%. I'm so sorry. I feel like I kind of talked about March of the Witch Hunters like it was before we see Dorothy speak to them. But I feel like Boq was like, I have a personal vendetta. Maybe not. Maybe that's after. But anyways, we see that. And then eventually Elphaba traps Dorothy. Glinda's there. And like, this is when For Good happens. And it was so sad. And then she like not locks her in a closet, but she's like, you hide here. Dorothy comes out, melts Elphaba. Glinda is very sad and hugs her hat, and it's like very sad. And then Glinda has a turning point where the movie ends with her changing her ways, if you will, and welcoming the animals in. And the wizard, she turns on the wizard, she turns on Madame Morble. And it's like satisfying in a way, but it's also like, again, you're just also a dictator. Like, yes, the wizard was a dictator. You're also a dictator. And obviously there is that detail of like when they're saying goodbye, Elphaba does say like, I don't want you to try to save my image. Let them blame me for everything. And that was really sad. That was really sad. The moment when Elphaba says, look at me through their eyes, not yours, I genuinely want to cry thinking about that, because it's like, I think that's really the point. Glinda doesn't see the reality of the situation. She doesn't see the way they hate her, the way they've scapegoated Elphaba, the way they've scapegoated the animals. You know, that was genuinely so sad. And For Good was done so well. Glinda watching Elphaba like melt through a little crack in the door was super interesting. I really liked the ending sequence. And obviously we see, I don't know why I'm saying obviously, but when Glinda's giving her little speech, we also see Fiyero comes and he like knocks on, like, there's a trap door. She didn't actually melt. She like faked her death. And they run away together to the land beyond Oz, which they had referenced earlier. Oh, and a moment I really liked, and I forgot to mention this, but when they're saying goodbye, Elphaba gives Glinda the Grimoire, and she's like, take this. And Glinda's like, I can't read this. And she's like, you'll have to learn. And that was really interesting because, again, I think one of the most confusing things for me is like power, right? It's like some people automatically have it, but then, like magical powers, I mean, but then, and why do you need to have powers to be the leader, right? It's like she wants Glinda to be the new wizard, or the good witch, the person in charge, but the person in charge needs to have powers. Like, you need to read the Grimoire. Like, I'm overthinking that stuff, but I find it a little bit confusing. I'm not gonna lie. How do people get power? Why do you need to have magic to be in charge? It's not like the wizard could read the Grimoire. Anyways, we see Glinda like thinking about Elphaba, obviously, and like mourning her, and then the Grimoire starts flipping its pages. So that's like a very beautiful moment where it's kind of like, I think maybe there's something, if I try to like analyze it and think about it like from a deeper level, I'm like, maybe the magic is about like some kind of emotional connectivity. And that made no sense. But like, maybe it's about like some power within you, right? And whether that's good power or bad power. And I think Glinda is like, she wants to be loved more than she wants to be good. And maybe this change in her when she's like, I need to do good by my friend who passed away. Like, I can't let Elphaba's death be in vain. I'm going to be good. I'm going to embrace the animals. I'm going to change things. Maybe that like genuine moment of like wanting to do good is what allows her to connect with the magic. Whereas before it was like about appearances and power and like not something as sincere, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So it's like, I don't know. I think there's something very beautiful about that. Fiyero and Elphaba, meanwhile, are like running away to the land beyond Oz. I really liked Wicked for Good, genuinely. It was so good. No Good Deed, top tier song for me. For Good, not title track, but like For Good has always been one of my favorite Wicked songs. Like when I listen to Wicked, I genuinely think watching Wicked at like 10 years old on the West End changed my brain chemistry. And the song For Good meant so much to me because I moved a lot when I was younger. And I think that was a song that gave me a lot of comfort and really changed my perspective on like grief and also permanence, like having people in your life and finding value in it, even if it like doesn't last forever. And I think that gave me a lot of comfort when I was moving away from people and like facing the idea that I might never talk to them again. And it allowed me to be like, maybe I will, maybe I won't, but like at least I can appreciate what this has changed about me and given me. And that meant so much to me as a young person who moved a lot. And I feel like I take that sentiment with me a lot. And I think about it even, I've never even been in a romantic relationship, but I think about just relationships in general. And I feel like I have a fairly, I don't want to like compliment myself, but I feel like I have a fairly healthy perspective on relationships where I'm like, I feel like we can appreciate, because obviously I cover TV on this podcast and I cover reality TV as well as like fictional TV, scripted TV. And there's often this conversation about like relationships past in dating shows and stuff like that, or like these relationships fail. And I always try to like have the perspective of like, even if something doesn't last forever, we can still take things from it. And I do think that's something that like, I'm not saying that it was solely given to me by Wicked. I think my lived experience and like my own experiences has bestowed that upon me. But I do think this was a big moment in my life where I was like, whoa, you know, like I do think that was a deeply impactful thing to hear at 10 years old for somebody who is really battling with the idea of like, I'm making friends and then I'm leaving them and I don't have anybody in my life besides like my close family that's like really in my life for a long period of time. Like that was a very comforting thing to be like, every time I would move, I'd be like, you know what, you've rewritten my story by being my friend, even if we never meet again, you know? So I love For Good, but No Good Deed, also one of my favorite songs. It was such a good musical, and I had such a good time at the drive-in movie theater. But I think that's all I wanted to say about Wicked For Good. If I forgot anything, I'm sorry. I feel like I covered most of the stuff I wanted to cover. It's been like a few days now since I watched it, so I don't know. Hopefully I didn't forget anything, but you know, if there's more I want to say, like if I revisit Wicked, I can always talk about it again. But that's what I wanted to say right now. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Wicked. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on I Love LA. I will be back next week to talk about I Love LA episode 5, I believe we're on. And something else. I don't know what yet, but something else. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. Follow me wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get notified when I upload a new episode. My social media is linked down below. I'm not the best at posting podcast updates on there, to be quite honest, but it's there if you care. I hope you have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning in.